Pollinators are extremely important to the environment. In this video, we'll talk about the different pollinators, their impact on the environment, and how you can help protect them from going extinct. I'm sure you know what pollinators are, but in case you don't, they are an insect or other animal that moves pollen from a male anther of one flower to the female stigma of another flower. This fertilizes the ovules of the flower by the male gametes from the pollen grains, which leads to the female flower yielding fruit and spreading seeds. This is a pretty important effect. 3/4 of plants in the world and 35% of the world's food crops rely on pollinators for reproduction. Pollinators all pollinate in different ways, but it usually includes the animal traveling between different plants while getting pollen stuck on their body or fur and transferring it while they fly around. Bees are the biggest pollinator, pollinating the most variety of plants and pollinating the fastest, thus transferring the most pollen. Other pollinators include butterflies and hummingbirds, and some more or less known include insects, bats, and moths. Unfortunately, a lot of pollinators are facing extinction because of pesticides, pathogens, weather and climate, habitat loss, or poor nutrition, or a mix of these problems. There are quite a lot of pollinators, so let's learn more about them. One of the most recognizable pollinators are butterflies. They aren't as efficient at pollinating as other animals because their skinny bodies and legs don't pick up as much pollen. They don't have a good sense of smell, but they have a great eyesight. They like brightly colored flowers, especially with colors like red, orange, and yellow. The plants they like have big petals so they can land easily. Many species of butterflies are considered endangered, including monarch butterflies, who are especially vulnerable to deforestation and climate change because of their dependence on milkweed and their sensitivity to the environment. A pollinator that tends to get overlooked is the bat. Bats are really important pollinators in tropical environments or deserts. They can be found in places like Africa and Southeast Asia. The plants they pollinate open at night because bats are nocturnal. The plants they like are large and pale in color and have strong fruity smells. Bats also pollinate over 300 species of fruits, including mangoes, bananas, and guavas. Bats also feed on insects that usually damage gardens. Some recent studies say that bats eat enough pests to save more than $1 billion per year on crop damage and pesticide costs in the United States corn industry alone. Birds also contribute to pollination. Different birds help all over the world, like hummingbirds in the United States, honey eaters in Australia, and sunbirds in tropical climates. The flowers they like tend to have tubular or funneled petals for their long beaks, with the pollen deeply hidden. There also have to be strong sticks or stems for them to perch on. The flowers they like tend to be colorful, but fragrance doesn't matter because birds have a poor sense of smell. Hummingbirds have to eat a lot of nectar to keep their heart pumping 1,200 times per minute, so they tend to pollinate a lot of plants. Beetles are surprisingly important pollinators too, especially for really ancient species of plants. Beetles have been around since the Mesozoic era and have been pollinating since then. They also like pale white or green flowers that have a fruity scent and open during the day. Beetles face danger in the form of habitat destruction, pesticides, but also light pollution. Lots of insects, including some beetles, use the sky and stars to orient themselves when migrating. Light pollution makes stars less visible, disrupting the insect's inner compass. They are then tricked into following city lights or other artificial lights. Flies and other two-winged insects like mosquitoes are other types of insect pollinators. They don't tend to be as furry as the other pollinators, so they don't pick up as much pollen, but they do pollinate specific plants. They like plants of a range of colors, from pale and white to dark purple or brown. The plants they like sometimes don't have the best smell. Plants have evolved to smell like rotting meat or other putrid odors if they want to attract flies and other similar insects. Another really important pollinator is the bee. There are many different types of bees all over the world, and they all contribute to the environment. The plants they like tend to be brightly colored, except red because bees can't see red. They have sweet smells and they open during the day. Bees can actually see ultraviolet light, and a lot of plants look different to bees than to humans. Plants that bees pollinate have a region of low ultraviolet reflectance at the center, so bees can see where to land. This is called a nectar guide, and you can see an example on screen. On the left is what humans see, and on the right is what bees see. Lastly, moths help bats pollinate during the night. Some moths operate during the day, but most are nocturnal. Moths, like butterflies, are called accidental pollinators. Unlike many other pollinators, they don't visit flowers for the pollen. They visit for the nectar only, transferring the pollen in the process. Also similarly to butterflies, they suck out the nectar through their long tongues. They are a little overlooked because they pollinate during the night, but they are actually quite hardworking. They aren't really picky about the types of plants they visit, and they aren't afraid to work for deeply hidden nectar as well. Moths haven't been hit as hard by climate change as some of the other pollinators, but their population is shrinking about 10% each decade. If you want to help pollinators, you can do a couple of things. You can plant a couple of native plants to help the native pollinators in the area. Those types of plants have a lot of pollen and nectar. In addition, they are usually low maintenance, drought tolerant, and pest free. They are also good at stopping erosion, and they provide good shelter for other animals. Another tip is to avoid pesticides, as they contribute to the endangerment of pollinators. And usually pollinators eat bad pests and ignore the pests that are good for your garden, so they regulate the garden in place of pesticides. And you can always educate others about the importance of pollinators and their impact on the world.